What would you do if you were in the same circumstances with the characters in the following stories? We would very love to know, and you could share it below under the comment sections. Now, let the stories unfold.
Elena Cross stood frozen in her bedroom doorway, the anniversary gift slipping from her hands as she watched her boyfriend Leo tangled in silk sheets with her younger sister Bianca. The crystal vase shattered against hardwood, just like 3 years of devotion, sisterly love, and every naive belief that loyalty meant something. But here's the truth about betrayal. It doesn't just break you. Sometimes it burns away everything weak, leaving only steel behind. This is the story of a woman who walked into hell and came out a queen. Stay until the end. You won't believe where this goes. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far Elena's story travels. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows of Elena's downtown office, painting geometric shadows across architectural blueprints that represented months of meticulous work. She'd been operating on caffeine and determination for weeks, but today felt different. Today marked 3 years with Leo, and despite the distance that had crept between them lately, Elena believed in fighting for what mattered. The small velvet box in her purse wasn't an engagement ring. She wasn't that traditional, but the vintage cufflinks inside had cost her 2 months of careful saving. Leo collected them, and these particular pieces, with their Art Deco sapphire inlays, were exactly his style. A peace offering, a bridge back to the easy affection they'd once shared. "You're leaving early?" Her assistant Marcus raised an eyebrow as Elena gathered her things at 4:30. "Are you feeling all right? Should I call a doctor?" Elena laughed, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "Very funny. I just want to surprise Leo. We've both been so busy lately, and I thought—" She trailed off, suddenly feeling foolish for explaining. "Anyway, I'll have my phone if anything urgent comes up." Marcus's expression softened. "Go. Be romantic. The Henderson Project can survive without you for one evening." The drive to the brownstone she shared with Leo took 20 minutes through traffic that moved like cold honey. Elena used the time to rehearse what she'd say. Something light, affectionate, without the edge of accusation that had crept into too many of their recent conversations. Leo had been distant, working late, taking calls in other rooms. Elena had told herself it was stress from his new position at his family's investment firm, that it would pass. She'd tell him tonight that she missed him, that she wanted to try harder, that 3 years meant something worth protecting. The neighborhood was quiet when she pulled up, the tree-lined street drowsy in the golden hour light. Elena let herself in through the front door, calling out as she always did. "Leo, I'm home early." Silence answered her. Not the empty silence of a vacant house, but something thicker, anticipatory. Elena's stomach tightened with an anxiety she couldn't name as she set her keys in the ceramic bowl by the door, her purse on the entry table. The gift box felt suddenly heavy in her hand. "Leo?" A sound from upstairs, muffled. Could have been anything, furniture moving, a dropped book. But Elena's instincts, honed by years of reading blueprints and risk assessments, screamed warning. She took the stairs slowly, her heels silent on the runner carpet. Their bedroom door stood ajar. Later, Elena would remember this moment with crystalline clarity. The way dust motes danced in the late sun, the scent of the vanilla candles she'd bought last weekend, the distant sound of traffic, the last second of her old life, before everything detonated. She pushed the door open. Leo was in their bed with its custom headboard that Elena had designed herself, the Egyptian cotton sheets she'd insisted on, the down comforter they'd argued over because Leo ran hot at night and Elena was always cold. And he wasn't alone. Bianca. Her sister Bianca, 23 to Elena's 28, with her cascade of dark curls and her dramatic eyes and her habit of playing the victim in every situation. Bianca, who'd been crashing on their couch for 2 weeks because she'd had another fight with their mother. Bianca, who Elena had defended, supported, covered for since they were children. They hadn't hurt her yet. Lost in each other, tangled together in a tableau so cliché it would be laughable if it wasn't destroying Elena's entire world. The crystal vase she'd been holding, a Waterford piece, elegant and expensive and utterly meaningless now, slipped from her nerveless fingers. The crash brought their heads around. For a single suspended moment, no one moved. Leo's face cycled through shock, guilt, and something that looked almost like relief. Bianca's expression was harder to read, defiance mixed with shame, or maybe Elena was projecting what she wanted to see. Elena! Leo scrambled for the sheet, suddenly modest, as if covering himself could somehow undo what she'd witnessed. This isn't… we weren't… Don't. Elena's voice came out steady, which surprised her. She felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt everything at once, a supernova of rage and grief and disgust collapsing into a singularity so dense it became numbness. Don't insult me with a lie right now. Bianca sat up, holding the sheet to her chest, and there it was. That familiar pout, the wounded doe eyes that had gotten her out of trouble her whole life. Lena, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to find out this way. We wanted to tell you. We? The word tasted like poison. There's a we now? Leo had the grace to look away. Elena, please, let me explain. This just happened. We tried to fight it, but how long? Elena heard herself ask, though she wasn't sure she wanted the answer. Does it matter? Bianca's voice had gone defensive, which was how Elena knew it was bad. You're going to hate us anyway. How long? Leo exhaled, running a hand through his hair in a gesture Elena had once found endearing. Now it just looked performative. 4 months, since New Year's Eve. 4 months. Elena calculated backward. The party at his boss's house, the one where she'd had the flu and stayed home, encouraging Leo to go anyway, to make a good impression. The night she'd told Bianca to go with him so Leo wouldn't feel abandoned. The night she'd trusted both of them. I see. Elena's laugh came out wrong, sharp and glassy. So every time I defended you to Mom, Bianca, every time I lent you money, gave you a place to stay, every time I covered for your mistakes and believed in your potential, you were screwing my boyfriend. It's not like that, Bianca protested. What Leo and I have is real. I've never felt this way about anyone. You of all people should understand what it's like to… To what? Fall in love? Elena's composure cracked, just slightly. I do understand, Bianca. I loved him. Past tense, as of about 90 seconds ago. She looked at Leo, really looked at him, and felt the last threads of affection snap. He was attractive, yes, dark hair, strong jaw, the kind of conventionally handsome that photograph well. But suddenly, Elena saw the weakness underneath, the easy charm that masked a fundamental inability to make hard choices, the privilege that had insulated him from consequence his entire life. Get out, she said quietly. Leo blinked. What? Both of you. Get dressed, pack your things, and get out of my house. Elena, come on. Can't we talk about this like adults? Leo was sliding into his pants, trying for reasonable, as if this was a business negotiation gone wrong. We're all upset right now. Let's take a breath, and my name is on the lease. Mine alone. You moved in with me, remember? Because you were between places, and I was the understanding girlfriend. Elena walked to the closet, pulled out a suitcase, and threw it at his feet. You have 30 minutes. Take what you can carry. I'll have the rest delivered wherever you want, but right now, I need you gone. Bianca was crying now, mascara tracking down her perfect face. Lena, please, I know I messed up, but you're my sister. We can work through this. Family forgives. Don't you dare. Elena's voice dropped to something cold and final. Don't you dare talk to me about family. You lost that right when you decided my relationship was community property. She turned and walked out, her legs somehow steady despite the earthquake inside her chest. Behind her, she heard frantic whispers, the rustle of clothes, Leo's voice trying to soothe Bianca's tears. The sounds made her want to vomit. Elena descended the stairs like a woman in a dream, each step deliberate. In the kitchen, she poured herself a glass of water she didn't drink, stared at the refrigerator covered in photos, her and Leo at the beach, at the mountains, at a dozen places that now felt like they'd happened to someone else, someone naive enough to believe that love and loyalty were constants instead of variables. Footsteps on the stairs. Leo appeared first, suitcase in hand, Bianca trailing behind him with her overnight bag clutched to her chest like a shield. Elena? Leo paused at the bottom of the stairs. I really am sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to know that. What I know, Elena said, still not looking at him, is that you're a coward who couldn't even end one relationship before starting another. What I know is that I wasted 3 years on someone too weak to do the right thing. That's not fair. Fair? Elena finally turned to face him. You want to talk to me about fair right now? Get out, Leo. And if you have any decency left, you'll tell your family not to contact me. I'll handle the professional fallout from the Hartley account myself. His face paled. The Hartley account? Elena, that's a $12 million contract. You'd sabotage your own career to have integrity? Yes, I would. It's called having principles. You should try it sometime. Bianca stepped forward, her voice small. What do I tell Mom and Dad? Whatever you want. That I'm being unreasonable. That I don't understand true love. That I'm a cold bitch who can't be happy for her sister. Elena's smile was razor sharp. I honestly don't care anymore, Bianca. You've been the family favorite your whole life. I'm sure they'll find a way to make this my fault. That's not true. You know Mom and Dad love you. They love me when I'm useful, when I bail you out, when I don't make waves, when I play my role as the responsible one, while you get to be free and spontaneous and forgiven for everything. Elena grabbed her car keys. Well, I'm done with that role. You want to be with Leo? Congratulations. You get to deal with his student loans, his entitled attitude, and his mother's passive-aggressive dinner parties. I hope you're very happy together. She brushed past them, shoulder-checking Leo hard enough to make him stumble. At the door, she paused. Lock the door when you leave. Put the key under the mat. I'll have the locks changed tomorrow. Where are you going? Leo asked, and the concern in his voice made her want to laugh, or scream, or both. Anywhere you're not. Elena walked out into the cooling evening without looking back, got in her car, drove. She had no destination in mind, just the desperate need to move, to put distance between herself and the smoking crater of her old life. She drove until the city lights gave way to suburbs, then to stretches of highway bordered by nothing but trees and darkening sky, pulled over at a rest stop somewhere past midnight, killed the engine, and finally let herself feel it. The betrayal was a physical thing, barbed and brutal. Leo she'd loved, but Bianca she'd protected since the day her sister was born. How many times had Elena covered for her? Lied to their parents about missed curfews and borrowed money and consequences? Bianca never wanted to face? How many scholarships and opportunities had Elena given up so Bianca could have her turn in the spotlight? And this was the thanks. This was what love and loyalty bought you in the end. Elena's phone buzzed, text messages flooding in. Her mother. Bianca told me what happened. We need to talk about this. You're being very dramatic. Her father. Your sister made a mistake. We all make mistakes. Be the bigger person. Her cousin Sarah. OMG, is it true about Leo and Bianca? Call me. She turned the phone off. The woman who'd driven away from that brownstone 3 hours ago would have answered, would have tried to explain, to defend herself, to make people understand. But that woman was gone, burned away. And Elena didn't miss her. What she felt, sitting in the dark with nothing but the sound of distant trucks on the highway, was something unexpected. Relief. The relationship with Leo had been dying for months. She'd just been too stubborn to admit it, too invested in the idea of them to notice the reality was crumbling. And her family? They'd been taking advantage of her giving nature for years. Bianca wasn't the first to treat Elena's kindness as weakness. She was just the one who'd finally pushed things too far. Elena started the car and pulled back onto the highway. She drove through the night, and by the time dawn painted the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, she'd made it to the coast, parked at an empty beach and watched the sun rise over water that stretched to the horizon. Her old life was over. The person she'd been, accommodating, forgiving, endlessly patient, was dead. And good riddance. The question now was who she'd become in the aftermath. Elena's phone buzzed in her cup holder. She'd turned it back on an hour ago, steeling herself for the onslaught. But this message wasn't from family. It was from her office. Marcus. Emergency, Henderson project in crisis. They moved up the presentation to Monday. Need you back ASAP. Elena stared at the message, then at the ocean. She could ignore it, could keep driving until she hit a town where no one knew her name, start over somewhere fresh and clean. The appeal was strong, A blank slate, no complications, no one expecting her to be anything but exactly who she wanted to be. But running meant letting the betrayal win, meant letting Leo and Bianca take more from her than they already had. No. Elena typed back, "Be there in 4 hours, schedule the team meeting for 2 p.m. She turned the car around and drove back toward the city, toward the life she'd built through her own talent and determination. Leo had been an accessory to that life, not the foundation. Bianca had been deadweight, not necessary support. And her family's approval? Elena was done performing for that particular audience. By the time she pulled into her office parking garage, she'd made several decisions. The first, hire a lawyer to ensure everything with the brownstone was airtight. The second, notify the Hartley Group that she'd be transitioning their account to a colleague due to a conflict of interest. It would cost her professionally, but integrity was worth more than any commission. The third decision was simpler, more visceral. Never again. Never again would she make herself small for someone else's comfort. Never again would she swallow her needs to keep the peace. Never again would she confuse kindness with weakness. Marcus met her at the elevator, coffee in hand and worry on his face. "You look terrible. What happened?" "Life implosion. I'll tell you later." Elena took the coffee gratefully. "Right now, let's save the Henderson project." "What went wrong?" They walked and talked, Marcus filling her in on the details. The presentation had been moved up because of board politics Elena couldn't have predicted. 3 months of work needed to be refined and perfected in 72 hours. It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like purpose. Elena threw herself into the work with an intensity that made her team nervous. She refined every detail, anticipated every objection, built contingency plans for the contingency plans. By Sunday night, the presentation was flawless. Monday morning, she walked into the Henderson Group's boardroom wearing her favorite suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, armor disguised as business casual, and proceeded to deliver the pitch of her career. She was brilliant, sharp, uncompromising. Every question was answered with precision, every concern addressed with solutions so elegant they seemed obvious in retrospect. She read the room perfectly, knowing when to push and when to listen, when to charm and when to stand firm. When she finished, the silence lasted 3 heartbeats before the applause began. They signed the contract that afternoon. $14 million, the largest account Elena's firm had ever landed. Her boss offered her a partnership on the spot. Elena negotiated for better terms and accepted. That evening, she sat in her newly empty brownstone. She'd had movers clear out every trace of Leo while she was conquering the Henderson pitch, and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. This was who she'd been before Leo, before playing the role of supportive girlfriend dulled her edges. This was who she could be without the weight of other people's expectations. Her phone rang, an unknown number. Elena almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Cross?" The voice was smooth, professional, with the faint trace of an accent she couldn't place. "My name is Marco Valenti. I'm calling about a potential business opportunity." Elena straightened. She knew that name. Everyone in commercial development knew that name. Marco Valenti was a legend, the Italian businessman who'd built an empire that spanned hospitality, real estate, and half a dozen other industries. He was also notoriously selective about who he worked with, vetting potential partners with an intensity that bordered on paranoid. "Mr. Valenti, this is unexpected. How did you get my personal number?" A low chuckle. "I make it my business to know who the best people are in any given field. Your work on the Henderson project came to my attention. Impressive presentation, ruthless negotiation, exactly the kind of approach I appreciate." "Thank you." Elena's mind raced, trying to figure out the angle. "Though I have to admit, I'm curious why you're calling me directly instead of going through my firm." "Because I prefer to deal with talent, not bureaucracy. I have a project that requires someone with your particular skills. Mixed-use development, high stakes, complicated politics. The kind of thing that would make most architects run for cover." "And you think I'm not most architects?" "I know you're not. The question is whether you're interested in proving it." Elena stood, paced to the window. Outside, the city glittered with a million lights, each one representing someone's dream, ambition, or desperation. 2 weeks ago, she would have said no. Would have been cautious, sensible, risk-averse, but 2 weeks ago, she'd been someone else. Tell me more about this project, Mr. Valenti. I'd prefer to discuss the details in person. Are you free for dinner tomorrow night? Red flags went up. Elena had learned to be wary of business conducted over intimate dinners, of men who blurred the lines between professional and personal. I appreciate the offer, but if this is a legitimate business proposal, we can meet at my office or yours. Another chuckle, this one sounding almost approving. Direct. I like that. Unfortunately, the nature of this project requires discretion. My office would draw too much attention, and yours doesn't have the necessary security. The restaurant I'm suggesting is neutral ground with excellent privacy. Security for a development project? The site is in a disputed territory. Multiple parties have claims, and not all of them are resolved through legal channels. I need someone who can navigate complexity without flinching. He paused. But if you're not comfortable with dinner, I understand. I can find someone else. It was a test. Elena recognized the challenge in his voice, the subtle implication that she wasn't brave enough, wasn't serious enough. A month ago, it would have made her defensive. Now it just made her smile. Text me the address and time. I'll be there. Excellent. I look forward to meeting you, Ms. Cross. He hung up before she could respond. Elena stared at her phone, adrenaline humming through her veins. This was insane. Marco Valenti was powerful, connected, and according to rumor, not entirely legitimate in all his business dealings. Getting involved with him could be brilliant or catastrophic, with very little middle ground. The old Elena would have researched extensively, made lists of pros and cons, maybe consulted a mentor before making a decision. The new Elena texted Marcus. Need everything you can find on Marco Valenti. Personal, professional, rumors, facts, by tomorrow afternoon. Then she went to her closet and picked out an outfit for dinner with a man who might be her next great opportunity or her first spectacular mistake. Either way, it beat staying safe. The restaurant Marco Valenti chose was the kind of place that didn't advertise. Tucked into a renovated warehouse in the city's oldest district, it had no sign, no website, just an unmarked steel door and a reputation whispered among those who could afford discretion. Elena arrived exactly on time, refusing to be early and appear eager or late and seem unprofessional. The hostess, elegant, unsmiling, clearly trained to recognize who belonged and who didn't, took one look at Elena and nodded. Ms. Cross. Mr. Valenti is waiting. She was led through a minimalist dining room where conversations happened in murmurs and every table sat far enough apart to prevent eavesdropping. The private room at the back was all exposed brick and soft lighting, dominated by a single table set for two. The man who rose to greet her was not what Elena expected. Marco Valenti was somewhere in his early 50s, with silver threading through dark hair and the kind of face that aging had refined rather than diminished. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than Elena's car, but it was his eyes that caught her attention, dark, intelligent, and assessing her with an intensity that felt almost physical. Miss Cross? His handshake was firm, brief. Thank you for coming. Mr. Valenti. Elena took the seat he indicated, noting how he waited until she was settled before sitting himself. Old-world manners wrapped around something far more dangerous. I have to admit, the mystery is intriguing. Good. I was hoping you'd appreciate directness over games. He poured wine from a bottle Elena recognized as rare and expensive. So let me be direct. I'm planning a development in the Cordova district. Mixed use, high-end residential and commercial. The site has history, complications, and more than a few people who'd prefer it remain undeveloped. Elena accepted the wine, but didn't drink yet. The Cordova district has been tied up in legal battles for a decade. 3 different families claim ownership, the city wants it for public use, and last I heard there were historic preservation orders preventing any construction. You've done your homework. You called me less than 24 hours ago. Of course I did my homework. Elena met his gaze steadily. What I want to know is how you plan to cut through all that red tape and why you need an architect before you've even secured the rights. Marco's smile was sharp with approval. Because I don't just secure rights, Ms. Cross. I resolve disputes. The ownership issues will be settled within the month. The historic preservation concerns can be addressed through thoughtful design. What I need is someone who can create something extraordinary, something that honors the past while building the future, someone who won't compromise their vision when pressure comes from all sides. And you think I'm that person based on one presentation? I think you're that person based on 10 years of work that shows consistent excellence and zero tolerance for mediocrity. He leaned back, completely at ease. I also think you're at a crossroads. Something has changed in your life recently. You're taking risks you wouldn't have considered before. Elena's spine stiffened. Have you been investigating me? I investigate everyone I consider working with. It's not personal. It's survival. Marco's expression didn't change. A week ago, you ended a 3-year relationship. Your family is unhappy with you about something, and you just took on the most aggressive project of your career with a presentation that, according to my sources, was absolutely ruthless. So yes, something changed, and whatever it was, it made you sharper. The invasion of privacy should have angered her. Instead, Elena felt a strange sort of clarity. This was who Marco Valenti was, a man who believed information was power and used it without apology. She could walk away offended, or she could match his honesty with her own. You're right. Something did change. I stopped caring what people think of me. I stopped making myself smaller to fit other people's expectations. And I stopped confusing kindness with weakness. She took a sip of the wine. Excellent, of course. So if you're looking for someone who will buckle under pressure or compromise their integrity to keep you happy, I'm not your architect. But if you want someone who will build you something magnificent and won't apologize for the cost, then we should keep talking. The silence that followed felt electric. Marco studied her with those dark, penetrating eyes, and Elena refused to look away. This was another test, she realized. Everything with this man would be a test. Tell me about the betrayal, he said finally. Excuse me? The relationship that ended. It wasn't just a breakup. Someone betrayed you. It wasn't a question. I want to know how you handled it. Elena's first instinct was to tell him it was none of his business. Her second was to recognize this for what it was, an assessment of character, of how she dealt with conflict when it was personal rather than professional. I came home early and found my boyfriend in bed with my younger sister, she said, her voice level. They'd been seeing each other for 4 months. I threw them both out, cut ties with my family when they expected me to be understanding, and moved on. No drama, no revenge, just a clean break, and a decision to stop wasting energy on people who don't deserve it. Marco's eyebrows rose slightly. Your sister. That's particularly cruel. Yes, it was. Elena set down her wine glass. But staying angry about it would only give them more power over my life. So I chose to let it go and focus on what I can control. My work, my standards, my future. They can deal with the consequences of their choices without my participation. Practical. Cold, some would say. Survival. There's a difference. Elena tilted her head. Now it's your turn. You said you resolve disputes and need security protocols for a development project. That suggests your business dealings aren't entirely conventional. So before we go any further, I need to know exactly what I'd be getting into. Marco's laugh was genuine, surprised. Most people are too intimidated to ask. I'm not most people, and I'm not interested in building something beautiful only to have it caught up in legal battles or worse. So tell me the truth, Mr. Valenti. What exactly do you do? He considered her for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. I broker deals between parties who don't trust each other. I invest in projects that banks consider too risky. I solve problems that require understanding both legitimate business and the gray areas where law and necessity intersect. Some people call me a fixer. Others call me worse things. Are you connected to organized crime? I'm connected to everyone. That's how I stay in business. Marco's gaze never wavered. But I don't deal drugs, I don't traffic people, and I don't hurt anyone who doesn't come for me first. My business is complicated, sometimes dangerous, but it's not evil. Can you accept that distinction? Elena knew she should walk away. Every rational instinct screamed that getting involved with Marco Valenti was reckless, potentially catastrophic. But rationality had kept her in a dying relationship for too long, had made her tolerate disrespect from family, had nearly convinced her that safe was better than extraordinary. I can accept it, she said, on one condition. You never lie to me. If working with you puts me at risk, I need to know what I'm facing. I won't run, but I need the truth. Agreed. And I have a condition of my own. Marco leaned forward. This project is important to me. It's not just business, it's personal. The Cordova district is where I started in this city, where I built my first success. I want to give something back, create something that lasts. So I need your complete commitment. No half measures, no playing it safe. Can you give me that? Yes. The word came out without hesitation, and Elena felt something shift in her chest. This was it. The moment she stepped fully into her new life, the one where she bet on herself instead of playing defense. Marco smiled, and the transformation was startling. The ruthless businessman disappeared, replaced by someone warm, almost charming. Then we have a partnership. Welcome to the most complicated project of your career, Miss Cross. Elena, if we're going to be partners, use my first name. Elena. He tested the name, his accent turning it into something softer. Then you should call me Marco. The waiter appeared with the first course, and the conversation shifted to specifics, timeline, budget, the vision Marco had for breathing new life into forgotten space. Elena found herself engaged in a way she hadn't been in years, trading ideas with someone who understood both the practical and the aspirational aspects of development. Marco was brilliant, not just smart, but genuinely visionary, seeing possibilities where others saw only problems. He challenged every assumption Elena made, pushed her to think bigger, and when she pushed back with legitimate concerns, he listened with complete attention. You're not what I expected, Elena admitted over dessert. What did you expect? Someone more autocratic? Men with your kind of power usually don't listen well. Men with my kind of power usually fail eventually because they stop listening. Marco swirled his espresso thoughtfully. I learned a long time ago that the smartest thing I can do is hire people more talented than me and then get out of their way. You know your craft better than I ever could. My job is to give you the resources and protection you need to do your best work. Protection from what? People who want this project to fail, competitors who'd prefer the Cordova site stay empty, family members who have their own ideas about how I should spend my money. Something dark flickered across his expression. My son, for instance, believes this project is a waste of resources. Elena's curiosity sharpened. You have a son? Unfortunately, the word came out bitter. Leo and I haven't spoken in years. He made choices I couldn't support, aligned himself with people I despise. Last I heard, he was working at some investment firm, coasting on his name while producing nothing of value. The name hit Elena like a physical blow. For a moment, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. Leo. Marco's son was named Leo. How many Leos could there be working at investment firms in this city? Elena, are you all right? She forced herself to breathe, to think. What's your son's full name? Marco's expression shuddered, sensing the shift in her mood. Leo Valenti. Why? The universe, Elena decided, had a vicious sense of humor. Of all the men in this city, she'd somehow found her way to the father of her ex-boyfriend. The irony was so perfect, it was almost beautiful. Because Leo Valenti is the boyfriend I found in bed with my sister. The silence that fell was absolute. Marco stared at her, his face cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked like dark amusement. Then he started laughing, a genuine, slightly incredulous sound that made nearby diners turn their heads. You're serious? Completely. Elena felt her own lips twitch despite the absurdity. I came home early with an anniversary gift and found him with my sister Bianca. 4 months they'd been sleeping together, right under my nose. Marco's laughter faded into something harder. That sounds like Leo. Weak, entitled, always taking the path of least resistance. He studied Elena with new intensity. This changes things. If you're involved with this project, you'll be working closely with me. Leo will find out eventually, and he won't handle it well. Let me be clear about something. Elena leaned forward. I don't care what Leo thinks or feels. He made his choices. I made mine. We're done. If he has a problem with me working with his father, that's his issue to resolve. You're not worried about complications? The only complication would be if you let your relationship with your son interfere with our professional work. Can you do that? Marco's smile was sharp as a blade. Elena, I haven't let my relationship with Leo interfere with my life in years. He's nothing to me but a disappointment and a reminder to choose loyalty more carefully. If anything, knowing he betrayed you makes me more interested in this partnership. Why? Because it means you understand that family isn't sacred just because of blood, that loyalty has to be earned, and that walking away from toxicity, even when society says you shouldn't, is a sign of strength rather than weakness. He raised his espresso cup in a mock toast. Welcome to the family rebellion, Elena. I think we're going to do extraordinary things together. Elena touched her cup to his, feeling reckless and alive in a way she'd never experienced. This was insane. Working with her ex's father was a complication she didn't need, a potential powder keg of drama and conflict. It was also the most honest, engaging conversation she'd had in years. When do we start? She asked. Tomorrow, if you're available. I want to show you the site, introduce you to some key players. Fair warning, not everyone will be happy about this partnership. My business associates tend to be protective and they'll test you. Let them. I don't break easily. No. Marco's gaze held hers. I don't think you do. They finished dinner discussing logistics, but Elena felt the undertow of something else beneath the business talk. An awareness, sharp and undeniable, that this partnership was going to be more than professional. Marco was dangerous, complicated, and absolutely captivating. And Elena, for the first time in her careful, controlled life, wanted to see exactly what happened when she stopped playing it safe. She drove home that night with her mind racing, already sketching preliminary ideas for the Cordova project. The site had history. It had been a textile factory, then a speakeasy during Prohibition, then abandoned for decades while legal battles raged. The bones were good. The location was prime. She could do something spectacular with it. Her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number, but she knew who it was before she opened it. Thank you for an illuminating evening. I'm sending over the site documentation tonight. My driver will collect you at 9 a.m. Dress for walking through construction debris and meeting people who judge books by their covers. M. Elena smiled and typed back, I'll bring steel-toed boots and my sharpest suit. See you at 9. She fell asleep that night with blueprints dancing behind her eyelids and the echo of Marco's laugh warming something in her chest she'd thought had frozen solid 2 weeks ago. The morning came too early and too bright. Elena dressed with care, tailored pants, a silk blouse, and a blazer that meant business, paired with the promised steel-toed boots. She looked professional and practical, ready for whatever test Marco's people threw at her. The driver arrived precisely at 9 in a black sedan that screamed money and discretion. He was professional, silent, and drove with the kind of defensive awareness that made Elena wonder what exactly Marco needed protection from. The Cordova district sat on the edge of the old industrial zone, where warehouses were slowly being converted to lofts and galleries. The site itself was an entire block of crumbling brick and broken windows, beautiful in its decay. Elena's fingers itched for her sketchpad. Marco was waiting by the fence, deep in conversation with 2 men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. He spotted Elena and waved her over. Gentlemen, this is Elena Cross, the architect I told you about. Elena, meet Dante and Paolo. They handle security for my projects. Dante, the taller of the two, looked Elena up and down with open skepticism. She looks like she'd blow away in a strong wind. Funny, Elena said pleasantly. You look like you'd be out of breath climbing a flight of stairs. Guess we're both full of surprises. Paolo burst out laughing, while Dante's expression shifted to grudging respect. She's got a mouth on her. She's got a spine, Marco corrected, which is why she's here. Are we clear on the security protocols? As glass, boss. Dante pulled out a tablet. Perimeter sensors go in next week. Camera coverage is already at 60%. Anyone who doesn't belong comes near this site will know about it. They spent the next hour walking the property while Marco outlined his vision, and Elena's mind raced with possibilities. The building had good bones, high ceilings, natural light from industrial windows. She could preserve the character while modernizing the space, create something that honored history without being trapped by it. What do you think? Marco asked as they stood in what had once been the main factory floor. I think it's perfect. Elena turned in a slow circle, seeing not what was, but what could be. Ground floor commercial, Restaurants, galleries, maybe a boutique hotel. Upper floors residential, but not generic condos. Real homes with character. And we preserve the facade, keep the soul of the building intact. Can you make it profitable? I can make it legendary. Marco's smile was worth the bold claim. Then show me. I want preliminary designs by the end of the month. They were heading back to the entrance when a sleek sports car pulled up outside the fence. Elena's stomach dropped as Leo climbed out, his expression thunderous. Father, we need to talk. Marco's entire demeanor changed, warmth disappearing behind a wall of ice. I'm working. Make an appointment. I'm not making a fucking appointment to talk to my own father. Leo's gaze landed on Elena, and shock warred with fury on his face. What the hell is she doing here? Ms. Cross is my architect. Not that it's any of your business. Are you kidding me? You're working with her? Leo stalked closer to the fence. Do you have any idea what kind of person she is? She's vindictive, cold. She's standing right here, Elena cut in quietly. And she's perfectly capable of defending herself, though I'm curious what fantasy version of events you've concocted to make yourself the victim. Leo's face flushed. I'm not the one who threw my girlfriend and her sister out on the street without even listening. You were in my bed with my sister. There was nothing to listen to. Elena kept her voice level, refusing to give him the satisfaction of her anger. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual work to do. She turned away, but Leo's voice followed her. This is pathetic, Elena. Working with my father to get back at me? That's low even for you. Marco moved then, faster than Elena would have expected, positioning himself between them. That's enough. Elena is here because she's talented, not because she gives a damn about you. The world doesn't revolve around your mediocre existence, Leo. The sooner you accept that, the better. Mediocre. Leo's laugh was ugly. That's rich coming from you. Tell me, Father, does she know what you really do? Does she know about the bribes, the threats, the people who've disappeared when they got in your way? I know enough, Elena said before Marco could respond. I know your father built an empire through intelligence and strategic thinking, and I know you've built nothing but excuses. Now I'm done with this conversation. Marco, I'll see you tomorrow to review the timeline. She walked away without waiting for permission, her heart hammering but her stride steady. Behind her, she heard Marco's voice low and dangerous. Come near this site again, or Elena, and you'll regret it. Are we clear? She didn't hear Leo's response, and she didn't care. By the time she reached the car, she was shaking, not with fear but with adrenaline and something that felt almost like triumph. She'd faced Leo without flinching, without apologizing, without making herself small. The driver opened her door without comment, and Elena slid into the cool interior. A moment later, Marco joined her, his expression carved from granite. I apologize for that. Leo has a gift for making scenes. Don't apologize for him. He's not your responsibility. Elena met his gaze. But I need to know something. Is what he said true? About people disappearing? Marco was silent for a long moment. I've made difficult decisions, dealt with dangerous people, but I've never killed anyone who didn't try to kill me first, and I've never harmed innocents. He paused. Leo likes to dramatize my work to justify his own inadequacy. He wants to believe I'm a monster, so he doesn't have to face the fact that he's simply a disappointment. And the bribes? I prefer to call them strategic investments in mutually beneficial relationships. But yes, I've paid officials to expedite permits, smooth over complications. It's how business works in the real world. His gaze sharpened. Does that bother you? Elena considered. In a perfect world, everything would be above board, transparent, ethical. But the world wasn't perfect, and she'd seen enough to know that idealism without pragmatism was just another form of failure. As long as you're not hurting people or breaking laws that actually matter, I can live with gray areas. Just don't lie to me about it. I won't. Marco's expression softened slightly. You surprised me today. The way you handled Leo, most people crumble when he throws accusations around. I stopped letting weak men have power over me the day I threw him out. Elena smiled without humor. He can say whatever he wants. It doesn't change the fact that he's the one who cheated, lied, and proved himself unworthy of trust. I'm just the one who refused to pretend otherwise. Good. Marco's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with a frown. I need to handle something. Can we continue this tomorrow? Of course, send me everything you have on the property history, zoning requirements, and budget parameters. I'll start working up concepts. The car pulled up outside her office building. As Elena reached for the door, Marco's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. Elena, thank you for not walking away today. After Leo's performance, you would have been justified. Walking away would mean letting him win. I'm done with that. She squeezed his hand briefly. Besides, I meant what I said. I'm going to make this project legendary. She left him there and walked into her office building with her head high and purpose burning in her chest. This partnership with Marco was dangerous, complicated, and possibly the best decision she'd ever made. And if it drove Leo crazy in the process, well, that was just a bonus. The weeks that followed settled into a rhythm that felt both exhilarating and dangerous. Elena threw herself into the Cordova project with an intensity that bordered on obsession, spending 12-hour days refining designs and another few hours most evenings with Marco, reviewing progress over dinner or drinks. Their partnership deepened into something neither of them acknowledged aloud, but both felt humming beneath every conversation. Marco was unlike anyone Elena had ever worked with. He challenged her assumptions, pushed her to think bigger, and when she defended her choices with solid reasoning, he backed down with a respect that felt almost reverent. He was brilliant, ruthless when necessary, and unexpectedly kind in moments that caught her off guard. Like the night he noticed her rubbing her neck after hours bent over blueprints and had his driver take them to a late-night spa where he'd somehow secured a private massage therapist. Or the morning he showed up at her office with coffee, exactly how she liked it, and pastries from the bakery 3 neighborhoods over that she'd mentioned once, in passing, weeks ago. You're spoiling me, Elena said, accepting the cappuccino with a smile that felt too easy, too natural. I'm investing in my architect's well-being. Exhausted people make mistakes. But Marco's eyes held warmth that had nothing to do with business. Besides, you work too hard. Someone needs to make sure you remember to eat. I eat. Coffee and ambition don't count as meals. Elena laughed, and the sound surprised her. When had laughter become so effortless again? When had the weight of betrayal and family drama lifted enough that she could feel light? The answer, she suspected, had everything to do with the man sitting across from her desk, perfectly at ease in her space, as if he belonged there. They were reviewing structural engineering reports when Elena's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. She'd been ignoring her family's attempts at contact for weeks, but this message was different. Your sister is in the hospital. You need to come. Now. Elena's stomach clenched. Despite everything, Bianca was still her sister. The betrayal hadn't erased 2 decades of shared history, of Elena protecting her from consequences and covering her mistakes. What's wrong? Marco noticed the change in her expression immediately. Family emergency. My sister's in the hospital. Elena grabbed her bag, her mind already racing through possibilities. Accident, illness. I need to go. I'll drive you. You don't have to eat. Elena. Marco was already standing, his phone out to summon his driver. Let me help. The drive to the hospital felt endless despite the driver's efficient navigation through traffic. Elena's hands twisted in her lap, anxiety warring with resentment. Part of her wanted to ignore the message, to let her family handle their own crisis for once. But the part of her that had raised Bianca in all the ways that mattered couldn't quite shut down, no matter how much she wanted it to. Marco's hand covered hers, warm and steady. Whatever this is, you don't have to face it alone. You barely know me. I know enough, and I'm not leaving you to deal with your toxic family by yourself. They found Elena's mother in the emergency room waiting area, her face blotchy with tears. When she saw Elena, relief and accusation crossed her expression in equal measure. Finally, I've been calling you for hours. I was working. What happened to Bianca? Her mother's mouth tightened. She tried to kill herself. Pills. Leo found her in time, thank God. But the doctors say... Her voice broke. They say she's been depressed for weeks. Because of you. The accusation hit like a slap. Elena felt Marco tense beside her, but she kept her voice level. Because of me. You cut her off, refused to talk to her. She made one mistake, Elena, and you acted like she was dead to you. What did you expect? I expected her to take responsibility for sleeping with my boyfriend instead of making herself the victim. Elena's control was fracturing, rage bubbling up through the cracks. And I expect you, as her mother, to hold her accountable instead of blaming me for having boundaries. Boundaries? Her mother's voice rose. She's your sister. Family doesn't abandon family over a man. She didn't just betray me over a man. She betrayed me for 4 months while living under my roof, eating my food, and letting me defend her to everyone who said she was selfish and spoiled. So forgive me if I'm not rushing to absolve her of guilt because she can't handle the consequences. Marco stepped forward, his presence commanding enough to make Elena's mother actually look at him. Mrs. Cross, I assume? I'm Marco Valenti, and I'm going to say this once, very clearly. Your daughter Elena is the strongest, most principled person I've met in years. If Bianca is suffering, it's because of her own choices, not because Elena refused to enable her manipulation. So I suggest you think very carefully about how you speak to Elena, or you and I are going to have a problem. Elena's mother gaped at him, then turned to Elena with something like horror dawning on her face. Valenti? Marco Valenti? Elena, please tell me you're not involved with this man. He's Leo's father. Do you know what you're doing to this family? I'm working with Marco on a development project. What I'm not doing is letting you guilt me into taking responsibility for Bianca's mental health. Elena crossed her arms. Where is she? I'll see her, make sure she's okay, and then I'm leaving. And Mom? This is the last time you get to blame me for someone else's choices. Her mother looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Elena's expression must have warned her off. She gestured toward the hallway. Room 347, but Leo's with her. He's been so supportive through all of this. Of course he had. Leo was probably loving the drama, the chance to play hero while Elena looked like the villain. The thought made her want to laugh or scream or both. Marco's hand found the small of her back as they walked toward Bianca's room, a steady presence that kept Elena grounded. Outside room 347, they could hear voices. Bianca's weak and tearful, Leo's soothing and performatively concerned. Elena pushed the door open. Bianca looked small in the hospital bed, her dark hair lank against white pillows, an IV in her arm. She'd always been beautiful in that effortless way that made strangers offer her things, jobs, opportunities, forgiveness. Even now, pale and ill, she looked like something from a tragic painting. Leo sat beside her, holding her hand. When he saw Elena, his expression hardened. Then his gaze landed on Marco, and shock eclipsed the anger. Father, what are you doing here? Supporting Elena. Something you've clearly never managed. Marco's tone could have frozen fire. How convenient that you're playing the devoted boyfriend now. I love Bianca. I've always loved her. Leo stood, positioning himself between the bed and them as if they posed a threat. Not that either of you would understand what that means. Leo, please. Bianca's voice was thread thin. Lena came. That's what matters. Elena moved closer, ignoring Leo entirely. Up close, she could see the shadows under Bianca's eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly. This wasn't just drama or manipulation. Her sister was genuinely suffering. Why? Elena asked quietly. Why would you do this? Bianca's eyes filled with tears. Because everyone hates me. Mom and Dad are disappointed. Our cousins won't talk to me. And you won't even answer my calls. I ruined everything, and I can't fix it, and I just wanted it to stop hurting. So you took pills. I just wanted to sleep, to not feel like the worst person in the world for 5 minutes. Bianca's tears spilled over. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you, but you're my sister, Lena. You're supposed to love me no matter what. Love isn't unconditional acceptance of betrayal, Bianca. Love requires respect, and you showed me none. Elena's voice gentled despite the anger still simmering in her chest. But I don't want you dead. I never wanted that. Then forgive me, please. I can't live with you hating me. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you anymore. And I'm not responsible for fixing that. Elena glanced at Leo, who was watching with poorly concealed resentment. You made adult choices. Now you get to live with adult consequences. That includes finding your own therapist, your own support system, and your own path to becoming someone worthy of trust. That's cold, Leo said. She almost died, and you're giving her a lecture about consequences? She manipulated you into feeling sorry for her, and you're enabling her instead of helping her grow up. That's the real cruelty here. Elena looked back at Bianca. I hope you get the help you need, genuinely. But I'm done being your emotional safety net when you refuse to take responsibility for your actions. Bianca's face crumpled, and Leo moved to comfort her, shooting Elena a look of pure venom. You've changed. The Elena I knew had a heart. The Elena you knew was a doormat. I like this version better. Elena turned to leave, then paused. Bianca, when you're ready to actually apologize, not because you want forgiveness, but because you understand why what you did was wrong, call me. Until then, take care of yourself. She walked out before either of them could respond, Marco falling into step beside her. They made it to the elevator before Elena's composure cracked, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps that had nothing to do with exertion and everything to do with the emotion she'd been holding back. Breathe, Marco said, his hand firm on her shoulder. You did the right thing. Did I? She tried to kill herself and you set boundaries. That's not cruelty, that's survival. The elevator doors opened and Marco guided her inside. Bianca's mental health is not your responsibility. Her choices are not your fault. Say it. Her choices are not my fault, Elena repeated, but the words felt hollow. I just keep thinking, what if next time she succeeds? What if? Then that's on her, not you. You can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, especially when they're the one who burned you first. Marco's expression was fierce. Your sister needs professional help, real accountability, and consequences that teach her actions matter. What she doesn't need is you sacrificing yourself to make her feel better about her mistakes. The elevator reached the ground floor. Elena sagged against the wall, suddenly exhausted. My mother's going to make this impossible. She'll blame me for everything. Then stop caring what your mother thinks. She's choosing to enable Bianca instead of parenting her. That's her failure, not yours. They were heading toward the exit when a voice stopped them cold. Elena, we need to talk. Elena turned to find a man she didn't recognize, tall, thin, with ice-pale eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. He was expensively dressed, but something about him screamed danger in a way that made her instinctively step closer to Marco. Marco's entire body went rigid. Cade, what are you doing here? Following up on a business opportunity. The man, Cade, let his gaze slide to Elena with open assessment. This must be the architect I've heard so much about. Elena Cross. I've been wanting to meet you. The feeling isn't mutual. Elena kept her voice cool despite the warning bells ringing in her head. If you'll excuse us. I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, Ms. Cross, you're working on a project that belongs to me, the Cordova site. Marco here stole it out from under me, and I don't appreciate theft. The site was purchased legally through proper channels. You lost the bid because you were outmaneuvered. Accept it. Marco's voice was deadly quiet. And stay away from Elena. Cade's smile sharpened. Or what? You'll make me disappear like the others who got in your way? How many people know about your methods, Valenti? Does your pretty architect understand what kind of man she's partnered with? I understand enough to know you're trying to intimidate me, and it's not working. Elena crossed her arms. The Cordova project is happening with or without your approval. Now get out of my way. She tried to move past him, but Cade's hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. You should choose your allies more carefully, Ms. Cross. Marco has a habit of destroying everything he touches. Ask his son. Marco moved faster than Elena could track, his hand locking around Cade's wrist with enough force to make the other man hiss in pain. Touch her again, and you'll lose that hand. Are we clear? For a moment, violence hung in the air between them, thick enough to choke on. Then Cade released Elena's arm and stepped back, still smiling that cold, terrible smile. Message received, but this isn't over, Valenti. The Cordova project has complications you haven't anticipated, and when everything falls apart, and it will, I'll be there to pick up the pieces. He nodded to Elena. Pleasure meeting you, Ms. Cross. I suspect we'll see each other again soon. He walked away with measured, unhurried steps, and Elena found herself shaking with adrenaline and anger. Who was that? Victor Cade, Russian businessman, criminal enterprise head, and the most dangerous man I've ever crossed. Marco's jaw was tight. He's been trying to acquire the Cordova site for years. Uses it to launder money through his construction fronts. When I outbid him, I made an enemy. And you didn't think to mention this before now? I thought I had it handled. Kate operates through intimidation and legal pressure. I didn't think he'd approach you directly. Marco's expression was granite. This changes things. I need to increase security on the project. And on you. On me? Elena's laugh was sharp. I'm not some damsel who needs protecting. You are now the architect on a project worth millions to a man who doesn't accept defeat gracefully. That makes you a target. Marco pulled out his phone. Dante, I need security on Elena Cross immediately. Full detail, rotating shifts. And I want eyes on the Cordova site 24/7. Kate just made a move. Marco, this is insane. I can't have bodyguards following me around. You can, and you will. At least until we understand what Cade's planning. Marco's tone left no room for argument. I won't risk your safety because you're too stubborn to accept help. Elena wanted to protest, to insist she could handle herself, but the memory of Cade's cold eyes and the bruising grip on her arm made her reconsider. This wasn't like dealing with Leo's dramatics or her family's manipulation. This was real danger, and her pride wasn't worth her life. Fine, but they stay out of my way while I'm working. Agreed. Marco's expression softened slightly. I'm sorry. This isn't what you signed up for. I signed up to build something legendary with a complicated man and a gray area business. Turns out the complications include Russian mobsters. I'll adapt. Elena managed a wan smile. Though I'm starting to understand why you warned me this project would be dangerous. It's not too late to walk away. Yes, it is. I'm invested now. In the project and... She trailed off, not quite ready to finish that sentence. Marco's hand found hers, fingers threading together in a gesture that felt both natural and terrifying in its intimacy. And in seeing what we can build together, project-wise. Elena added the qualifier hastily, but Marco's knowing smile suggested he heard what she wasn't saying. They left the hospital together, Marco's hand warm in hers, and Elena tried not to think about how right it felt. How easy it would be to lean into this thing developing between them, to let the professional blur into personal until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. The next morning, Elena woke to find a security detail outside her building. Two serious-looking men in dark suits who introduced themselves as her protection team. It should have felt oppressive. Instead, knowing Marco cared enough to ensure her safety made something warm unfurl in her chest. She was reviewing designs at her office when her phone rang. Unknown number, but Elena had learned to answer everything since taking on the Cordova project. Miss Cross, this is Janet Reeves from St. Catherine's Hospital. I'm calling about Bianca Cross. Elena's heart stuttered. What happened? Is she okay? She's missing. Left the hospital sometime last night against medical advice. We've tried her emergency contacts, but no one's seen her. I thought perhaps you might know where she'd go. I haven't spoken to my sister since yesterday evening. Elena's mind raced. Where would Bianca go? What was she thinking? Have you called Leo Valenti, her boyfriend? He's not answering his phone. Miss Cross, I'm concerned. Your sister was on suicide watch. If she's alone and in crisis, I'll make some calls. If I find anything, I'll let you know. Elena hung up and immediately dialed Marco. He answered on the first ring. Bianca's missing. Left the hospital last night and no one knows where she is. A pause. Then, I'll put people on it. Where would she go if she was scared or upset? I don't know anymore. The sister I knew would come to me, but I'm the last person she'd want to see right now. Elena paced her office, anxiety gnawing at her. Leo's not answering his phone. That's suspicious, right? With Leo, everything is suspicious. Let me make some calls. I'll find her, Elena. Why are you doing this? She betrayed me. She hurt me. Why do you care if she's missing? Marco's voice gentled. Because you care. And despite everything, she's still your sister. I understand complicated family dynamics better than most. He hung up, and Elena forced herself to focus on work, though her concentration was shattered. 2 hours later, Marco called back. I found her. She's at one of Leo's properties outside the city, a cabin he inherited from his grandfather. My people confirmed she's there with Leo. Relief and fury warred in Elena's chest. So she runs away from the hospital and straight to him. Of course. There's more. My contacts at the hospital say Bianca's suicide attempt might not have been as serious as portrayed. Stomach pumped for 6 pills, not 60. Enough to make her sick but not kill her. You think she faked it? I think she dramatized it. Whether consciously or unconsciously, I can't say. But the doctors were surprised by the severity of her family's reaction given the actual medical reality. Marco paused. Elena, I need to tell you something. Kate has been asking questions about Bianca, about your family connections, vulnerabilities. I think he's looking for leverage. Ice flooded Elena's veins. You think he'd go after my sister? I think he'd use whatever tools necessary to get what he wants. And a troubled young woman with a flair for drama would be an easy target. Marco's voice hardened. I'm sending people to watch the cabin. If Cade or anyone connected to him approaches, we'll know. I should go there, talk to Bianca, warn her. Absolutely not. If Cade is watching her, you showing up puts you both at risk. Let my people handle this. Elena wanted to argue, but Marco's logic was sound. Still, the helplessness grated. She'd spent her whole life protecting Bianca, and now she couldn't even warn her sister that she might be in danger. Keep me updated, please. I will. And Elena, try not to worry, we'll keep her safe. The reassurance helped, marginally. Elena threw herself back into work, using design problems to distract from family drama and mob threats. She was deep into structural calculations when her office door burst open. Leo stood there, disheveled and wild-eyed, with one of Elena's security team trying unsuccessfully to hold him back. We need to talk, now. Elena nodded to the security guard. It's fine. Let him in, but stay close. The guard stepped back reluctantly, and Leo stalked into her office, slamming the door behind him. What the hell are you doing with my father? Working, creating something extraordinary, minding my own business. Elena didn't look up from her blueprints. Was there something specific you needed, or did you just come here to make a scene? You're sleeping with him. Don't deny it. I'm not sleeping with anyone. Not that it's remotely your business if I were. Elena finally looked at him, taking in the rumpled clothes, the shadows under his eyes. You look terrible. Is Bianca okay? Leo's expression shifted from angry to defensive. She's fine. We're fine. She just needed space from the hospital, from your mother's judgment. From reality, you mean? Janet Reeves told me Bianca's attempt was 6 pills, Leo. Not exactly a serious effort. She was in pain. That's what matters. But you wouldn't understand that because you're too busy playing power games with my father to care about anyone but yourself. Elena stood, done with the conversation. Get out. Not until you explain what you're trying to accomplish here. Dating Marco to hurt me? Trying to prove some point? I'm not dating your father, and even if I were, it wouldn't be about you. You're not that important, Leo. You never were. Elena crossed her arms. Now leave before I have security remove you. You think you're so strong now, so independent, but you're just a lonely, bitter woman who can't handle that Bianca and I found something real. The words should have hurt. A month ago, they would have cut deep, but Elena just felt tired. If what you have is so real, why are you here? Why do you care what I'm doing or who I'm doing it with? She moved toward the door. Go home to Bianca. Leave me alone. And for both your sakes, be careful. There are dangerous people interested in the Cordova project, and anyone close to Marco becomes a potential target. Something flickered across Leo's face. Fear or maybe calculation. What kind of dangerous people? The kind you don't want to mess with. Marco's increasing security for a reason. Elena opened the door. Now get out. And Leo, don't come back. He left, still muttering about betrayal and manipulation, and Elena's security detail watched him go with professional wariness. Her phone buzzed. Marco. Everything okay? My people said Leo showed up. Elena. He left, wanted to accuse me of sleeping with you to hurt him. Marco. Are you? Sleeping with me? Elena stared at the message, her heart suddenly racing. They'd been dancing around this for weeks. The attraction, the growing intimacy, the way every conversation felt charged with possibility. Elena. Not yet. The response came immediately. Marco. Yet. I like that word. Dinner tonight? My place. We should discuss security protocols. Elena. Is that what we're calling it? Marco. Among other things, 7 o'clock. I'll send the car. Elena set down her phone, her hands trembling slightly. This was it. The moment where she decided whether to keep things professional or let them spiral into something far more complicated. Marco was dangerous, morally gray, and her ex-boyfriend's father. Every rational instinct screamed that getting involved romantically was a terrible idea. But when had she ever chosen the rational path since walking in on Leo's betrayal? She spent the rest of the day finishing designs and trying not to think about what the evening might bring. By 6:30, she was home, staring at her closet like it held the answers to questions she wasn't brave enough to ask aloud. The car arrived at 6:45. Elena wore a simple black dress that could be interpreted as business or seduction depending on context, her armor of choice when she didn't know what battlefield she was walking into. Marco's penthouse was everything she expected, sleek, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the city into art. He greeted her at the door in slacks and a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, barefoot and more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "You came. You invited me." Elena stepped inside, hyper-aware of his proximity. "Should we discuss those security protocols?" Marco's smile was slow and devastating. "Eventually. First, wine." They talked through dinner, about the project, about Bianca, about everything and nothing, and when the conversation finally lulled, Marco set down his glass and looked at her with an intensity that stole her breath. "I need to tell you something, and then you can decide what happens next. All right? I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that first dinner. The way you challenged me, refused to be intimidated, matched me step for step. You're brilliant, fierce, and so beautiful it actually hurts to look at you sometimes." He paused. "But getting involved would complicate everything. The project, your safety, our working relationship. So I need you to tell me honestly, is this just attraction, or is it something more?" Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She could lie, play it safe, keep things professional. Or she could tell the truth and see where it led. "It's more," she whispered. "It terrifies me, but it's more." Marco stood, crossed to her, and pulled her to her feet in one smooth motion. His hands framed her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "Then we're both in trouble," he said, and kissed her. The world fell away. There was only Marco's mouth on hers, his hands in her hair, the way he kissed like he did everything else, with complete focus and devastating skill. Elena melted into him, all her defenses crumbling in the face of want so fierce it felt like combustion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco rested his forehead against hers. "We should talk about this. Set boundaries, discuss implications. Later," Elena said, and kissed him again. They made it as far as the living room couch before urgency overtook them, clothes disappearing, skin against skin, and the electric thrill of finally giving in to what they'd been circling for weeks. Marco was attentive, demanding, praising her in Italian between kisses, and when Elena finally shattered in his arms, she felt remade. Afterwards, wrapped in his arms with the city glittering beyond the windows, Elena let herself feel the magnitude of what had just happened. She'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, made a choice that would change everything. "No regrets?" Marco asked quietly. "Not a single one." His arms tightened around her. "Good, because I'm not letting you go, Elena. Whatever comes next, we face it together." It should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt like coming home. They were still tangled together when Marco's phone shattered the peace with a harsh ringtone he'd designated for emergencies. He grabbed it, his expression darkening as he listened. "When? How long ago?" A pause. "Keep eyes on the situation. I'm on my way." He hung up and looked at Elena with something like dread. "It's Bianca. Cade's people have her." Elena's blood turned to ice. She was already pulling on her clothes, her mind racing through terrible possibilities. "How? Your people were watching her." "They grabbed her during a supply run. Leo left the cabin to get food, and Cade's men moved in the window when she was alone." Marco was dressed and armed in seconds, pulling a gun from a hidden safe with practiced efficiency. "They left a message. They want the Cordova site, or they'll kill her." "Then give it to them." The words came out before Elena could stop them, desperation overriding everything else. "It's just a building. It's not worth her life." Marco's expression was granite. "If I give Cade what he wants, it sets a precedent. Every criminal in this city will think they can take from me through intimidation. More people will die, Elena, not just Bianca." "I don't care about precedent. She's my sister. And she's leveraged because of you, Because Cade knows I care about you, and he knows you care about her. Marco grabbed his keys, his phone already at his ear. Dante, full team, the warehouse district, yes, now. Elena followed him to the elevator, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. This was her fault. If she hadn't gotten involved with Marco, hadn't taken the Cordova project, Bianca would be safe at home dealing with nothing worse than their mother's disappointment. The drive across the city was a blur of streetlights and Marco's clipped conversations with his security team. Elena sat rigid in the passenger seat, Marco having refused to let her stay behind despite her lack of experience with actual violence. I need you where I can protect you, he'd said, and the fear in his voice had been enough to silence her protests. They pulled up to an abandoned warehouse that looked like every crime scene Elena had ever seen in movies. Broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, the kind of place where bad things happen and no one heard you scream. 3 black SUVs were already there, and serious men in tactical gear swarmed out like ants from a disturbed hill. Dante approached Marco's car, his expression grim. Heat signatures show 4 hostiles inside, 1 hostage. They're expecting you to come alone. Obviously, I'm not doing that. Marco checked his gun with movements so casual they had to be automatic. Entry points? Front is too exposed, but there's a service entrance on the east side and the roof has access through an old loading crane. We can approach from multiple angles. Do it. I want Bianca out alive, and I want Victor Cade dead, in that order. Elena's stomach lurched. She'd known Marco was dangerous, had understood intellectually that his business involved violence. But hearing him order someone's death with such cold certainty made it visceral, real. Marco. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. You don't have to kill him, just get Bianca and leave. He turned to her, and the man looking back was someone she'd never seen before. Hard, merciless, every trace of warmth locked away. Cade took your sister to hurt me, to prove he can strike at what I care about. If I let that stand, if I show weakness, everything I've built will crumble. People will die, Elena, maybe you. I can't allow that. So you'll kill him to send a message. I'll kill him because he's a threat that won't stop until one of us is dead. This isn't the movies, Elena. This is survival. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing her skin with heartbreaking gentleness. Stay in the car. Lock the doors. If anything goes wrong, Dante will get you out. I'm not leaving you. You are. Because if something happens to you, I'll burn this entire city to ash, and I need you to live so I don't become that person. He kissed her, hard and desperate. Trust me, I'll get your sister back. Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness with his men like shadows separating from night. Elena sat frozen in the car, watching through tinted windows as they moved with military precision toward the warehouse. Minutes crawled by like hours. Elena's hands twisted in her lap, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She should have insisted on going in, should have demanded they call the police, should have done anything except sit here helpless while people she cared about walked into danger. The first gunshot cracked through the night like thunder. Elena flinched, her heart in her throat. More shots followed, a staccato rhythm that spoke of violence and chaos. She couldn't see anything, couldn't know if Marco was alive or bleeding out on a warehouse floor because of her family's drama and her involvement in his world. Then, silence. It stretched so long Elena thought she might scream from the tension. Her hand was on the door handle, ready to ignore Marco's orders and run inside when movement caught her eye. Marco emerged from the warehouse, Bianca cradled in his arms. She looked unconscious, or worse, her head lolling against his chest, and Elena was out of the car before conscious thought caught up with instinct. Is she alive? Drugged. They gave her something to keep her quiet. Marco's clothes were spattered with blood, but he moved without injury. Get the door. We need to move before police show up. Elena yanked open the back door of the SUV, and Marco laid Bianca gently across the seat. Her sister's pulse was thready but present, her breathing shallow but steady. Relief hit Elena like a physical blow. What about Cade? Marco's expression answered before his words did. Dealt with? Permanently. Dante appeared with 2 other men, all of them splattered with evidence of violence Elena didn't want to examine too closely. Cleanup crew is on the way. We need to go, boss. They piled into the vehicles and peeled away from the warehouse, leaving behind whatever carnage had happened inside. Elena held Bianca's hand, monitoring her breathing, trying not to think about the fact that Marco had just killed at least one person and possibly more. "Where are we going?" Elena asked as the city blurred past. "My private doctor. He'll check her out, make sure whatever they gave her isn't dangerous." Marco's hand found Elena's across the seat. "She's going to be fine." "You both are." Elena wanted to believe him, but fine seemed like a foreign concept now, something that belonged to a version of her life that no longer existed. The doctor was waiting at Marco's penthouse, a gray-haired man who asked no questions and worked with efficient competence. He examined Bianca, drew blood, hooked up an IV, and pronounced her stable within 20 minutes. Rohypnol, most likely. She'll sleep for several more hours, then wake disoriented but unharmed. Keep her hydrated and watch for respiratory depression. He packed his supplies with the air of someone who'd done this many times before. "Anything else, Mr. Valenti?" "That's all. Thank you, Dr. Chen." When they were alone, Marco finally let his composure crack. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands, and Elena saw the toll the last few hours had taken. This wasn't a man comfortable with violence despite his capacity for it. This was someone who'd done terrible things because the alternative was worse. She sat beside him, her hand finding his shoulder. "Are you okay?" "I killed 3 men tonight, Cade, his lieutenant, and a guard who wouldn't stand down." Marco's voice was hollow. "I've killed before, when I had to. But it never gets easier. I'm sorry, this is my fault. If I hadn't, don't." He looked at her with fierce intensity. "This is Victor Cade's fault for thinking he could threaten what's mine. Your only crime was being generous enough to care about a sister who betrayed you. She didn't deserve to be kidnapped." "No, she didn't." Marco pulled Elena close, holding her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded. "But she's safe now, and Cade will never hurt anyone again." They sat in silence, processing trauma in the quiet dark. On the other couch, Bianca slept on, unaware of how close she'd come to becoming a casualty in a war she didn't even know was being fought. Elena's phone buzzed. Leo, calling for the dozenth time since she'd left her office. She finally answered. "Where is she? What did you do?" Leo's voice was ragged with panic. "She's safe, drugged but alive. Your father rescued her from the men who kidnapped her." "Kidnapped? What are you talking about? I left for 20 minutes, and when I came back the cabin was trashed and she was gone. I've been losing my mind." Victor Cade took her, to leverage Marco into giving up the Cordova project. Elena kept her voice flat, too exhausted for emotion. "It's over now. Cade's dead, and Bianca's recovering at Marco's penthouse." "My father killed someone?" Leo's voice climbed toward hysteria. "Elena, what have you gotten involved in? This is insane. This is the world your father lives in, the world you benefit from while pretending to have clean hands." Elena stood, pacing to the windows. "Bianca can stay here tonight under medical supervision. Tomorrow, you can collect her and take her somewhere safe. But Leo? This is the last time I clean up a mess involving her. She's your responsibility now." "You're really just going to abandon your own sister?" "I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. Bianca made her choices. She chose you, chose drama, chose to ignore warnings about dangerous people. I love her enough to save her life. I don't love her enough to let her destroy mine." Elena's reflection in the window looked like a stranger, harder, colder, forged in fire. "Take care of her, Leo, and stay away from the Cordova project. It's too dangerous for amateurs." She hung up before he could respond. Marco had moved to stand behind her, his reflection joining hers in the glass. "That was harder than you're pretending." Everything about today was hard. Elena leaned back against his chest, letting him take some of her weight. "I keep thinking about what could have happened. If your people hadn't been fast enough, if Cade had decided to kill her just to prove a point. But he didn't, and she's alive because I wasn't willing to lose you by losing her." Marco turned her to face him. "Elena, I need you to understand something. This is who I am. Violence when necessary, ruthlessness in business, moral flexibility that would horrify most people. I can't change that, won't change it, so you need to decide if you can live with it." Elena looked at the man who'd killed for her sister, who'd held her like she was precious, who challenged and respected and desired her in equal measure. A month ago, she would have run. The old Elena didn't date dangerous men, didn't get involved in situations that required bodyguards and midnight rescues. But the old Elena was dead, burned away in the fire of betrayal, and reborn as someone who understood that safety was an illusion and control was a lie. "I can live with it," she said. "Can you live with the fact that I'm going to question you, challenge your methods, and refuse to be a silent partner in whatever empire you're building?" Marco's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time since the warehouse. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't." He kissed her, and Elena tasted relief and promise and the metallic edge of danger that would probably always flavor their relationship. When they broke apart, she felt steadier, more certain. What happens now? With the Cordova project, with Cade's organization? His people will scatter or consolidate under new leadership. I'll make it clear the project is untouchable, that anyone who comes after it answers to me. Marco's expression hardened. There will be pushback. Power vacuums are dangerous. But I've survived worse. "We've survived worse," Elena corrected. "I'm in this now. Full partner, remember? Full partner in the project. But Elena, the other parts of my business, I don't need to know details. Just don't lie to me and don't make me complicit in anything that crosses lines I can't uncross." She met his gaze steadily. "I can live with gray areas. I can't live with deception." "Fair enough." Marco glanced toward Bianca, still sleeping peacefully despite the chaos surrounding her. "What are you going to tell your family?" "Your mother will have questions." "The truth, that Bianca was in danger, you rescued her, and she needs to be more careful about the company she keeps." Elena's laugh was bitter. "Not that she'll listen, or that my mother will blame anyone but me." "Your family is toxic." "I know. I'm working on accepting that." Elena moved toward the guest room where Bianca slept. "I should stay with her, make sure she wakes up okay." "I'll stay too." Marco followed her, bringing blankets and pillows. "We'll take shifts watching her." They settled into chairs flanking the bed, and Elena found herself studying her sister in the dim light. Bianca looked young in sleep, vulnerable, nothing like the woman who'd betrayed her so casually. Had she ever really known her sister? Or had Elena been so busy playing protector that she'd never looked beneath the surface? "Do you think she'll change?" Elena asked quietly. "After this?" People rarely change unless they want to, and Bianca seems comfortable being the victim, letting others carry her consequences. Marco's voice was gentle despite the harsh words. "But trauma has a way of forcing growth. Maybe this will be her wake-up call. Or maybe she'll just find new ways to avoid responsibility." "Then you let her. You've done enough, Elena. More than enough." Bianca stirred around 3 in the morning, her eyes fluttering open with confusion and fear. Elena was at her side immediately, hand on her sister's shoulder. "You're safe. You're at Marco's penthouse. Do you remember what happened?" Bianca's face crumpled as memory returned. "Men. They broke into the cabin. One of them grabbed me, put something over my face, and everything went dark." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I thought they were going to kill me. I thought, but they didn't. Marco got you out." Elena kept her voice steady. "You were kidnapped by a criminal who wanted to hurt Marco through me. It's over now." "Through you." Bianca's expression shifted from fear to something uglier. "So this is your fault. I almost died because you're involved with Leo's father." Elena felt the accusation like a slap, but Marco's hand on her shoulder kept her grounded. "You almost died because dangerous people exist, and you were a convenient target. Elena saved your life by caring enough to have me rescue you. Show some gratitude." Bianca's gaze swung to Marco, seeing him clearly for the first time. Her eyes widened. "You really did kill for her. Leo said you would. He said you were obsessed." "I killed to neutralize a threat to my business and my family." "Elena is my family now." Marco's tone left no room for argument. "You're alive because she loves you despite your betrayal. I suggest you remember that." "Family?" Bianca looked between them, comprehension dawning with horror. "You're together. You're actually together. Oh my God, Lena. This is so messed up." "What's messed up is you sleeping with my boyfriend for 4 months and expecting me to smile about it." Elena's patience was fraying. "What's messed up is you attempting suicide for attention, then running away from the hospital to play house with Leo." What's messed up is you somehow making yourself the victim in a situation where you're the one who betrayed me. I made a mistake. I said I was sorry. You said you were sorry that I found out. That's not the same thing. Elena stood, too exhausted for this conversation. Leo's coming for you tomorrow. You'll go with him, and you'll stay away from the Cordova project and anyone associated with it. If you involve yourself in my life again, Bianca, it'll be on my terms. Are we clear? You've changed. You're cold now. I'm strong now. There's a difference. Elena headed for the door. Get some rest. Doctor says you'll be fine by morning. She left Bianca there, tears streaming down her face, and felt nothing but tired relief. This was it. The final severing of the cord that had bound her to her sister's drama. Bianca would always be family by blood, but Elena was done being responsible for her emotional well-being. Marco found her in the kitchen, staring at coffee she didn't remember making. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, solid and warm and steady. You did the right thing. Then why does it feel so awful? Because you're kind. Because ending relationships, even toxic ones, is painful. Marco turned her to face him. But pain doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes the right choice is the one that hurts most. Elena buried her face in his chest, letting herself have this moment of weakness. Tomorrow she'd be strong again. Tonight, she could fall apart in the arms of a man who'd literally killed to keep her sister safe. Morning came with pale sunlight and the ringing of Marco's phone. Leo, demanding to see Bianca. Marco gave him the address with clear instructions to take her and leave, and Elena prepared herself for one more confrontation. Leo arrived looking haggard, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. He barely glanced at Elena before rushing to Bianca's side, gathering her in his arms like she was made of glass. I'm so sorry. I should never have left you alone. This is all my fault. It's not your fault, baby. It's hers. Bianca pointed at Elena with all the venom she could muster. She got involved with dangerous people and put us all at risk. Leo's gaze swung to Elena, anger and fear warring in his expression. She's right. You brought this on yourself, on all of us. And you're both idiots if you think that's how this works. Marco's voice cut through their dramatics like a blade. Elena did nothing wrong. Victor Cade was a threat I'd been managing for years. He chose to escalate. He paid the price. End of story. You killed him. Leo's voice shook. You murdered someone and think you can just... I eliminated a threat to my family. Something you've never had the spine to do. Marco's contempt was withering. Now take your girlfriend and leave. Elena has work to do and you're not welcome here. Leo looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Marco's expression must have warned him off. He helped Bianca to her feet, supporting her weight as they shuffled toward the door. At the threshold, Bianca turned back. I hope you're happy, Lena. I hope he's worth losing your family over. He is, Elena said without hesitation. And I didn't lose my family. I chose to stop letting them destroy me. The door closed behind them, and silence filled the penthouse like a held breath releasing. Elena sagged against the counter, suddenly exhausted down to her bones. Is it over? She asked. Really over? With Cade, yes. With your family? Marco pulled her close. That's up to you, but I hope you choose to keep them at a distance. You deserve better than people who blame you for their choices. I choose you, Elena said, and meant it. I choose this partnership, this project, this complicated, dangerous, extraordinary thing we're building. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Marco kissed her, soft and reverent, and Elena felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She was someone new now, stronger, harder, willing to fight for what she wanted instead of accepting what she was given. The woman who'd found her boyfriend in bed with her sister was gone. In her place stood someone who'd survived betrayal, chosen power over safety, and loved a dangerous man without apology. And she had zero regrets. Over the following weeks, Elena threw herself into finishing the Cordova designs with renewed intensity. The project became her masterpiece, a tribute to survival, to transformation, to building beauty from ashes. She worked 18-hour days, collaborated with engineers and designers who matched her vision, and created something that would stand as a monument long after she was gone. Marco watched her work with pride that made Elena's heart swell. He supported every decision, challenged her when she played it safe, and celebrated each milestone like it was a personal victory. Their relationship deepened from passion into partnership, and Elena found herself imagining a future she'd never dared consider before. One evening, as they reviewed final renderings, Marco set down his tablet and looked at her with unusual seriousness. "There's something I need to say, something I should have said weeks ago." Elena's stomach fluttered. "All right. When this project is done, when the Cordova building stands finished and magnificent, I want you beside me. Not just as my architect or my business partner, as my equal in everything." He took her hand. "I love you, Elena. I think I have since that first dinner when you refused to be intimidated by my reputation. You make me want to be better, to build something that lasts beyond just money and power." Elena's throat tightened with emotion. "I love you too. Even though you're complicated and dangerous and probably going to give me gray hair from stress." Marco laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "I promise to make it worth the gray hair." "You already have." Elena kissed him, tasting promise and future and the electric thrill of choosing love on her own terms. "So what happens now? Now we finish what we started. We build something legendary, and we show everyone who doubted us exactly what we're capable of when we stop apologizing for being extraordinary." Elena smiled against his lips. "I like that plan." Outside the windows, the city glittered with possibility. Somewhere out there, Leo and Bianca were dealing with consequences Elena no longer cared about. Her family was probably still complaining about her choices, still expecting her to come crawling back. They would be disappointed, because Elena Cross had found something better than their approval. She'd found herself. And she wasn't giving that up for anyone. The design review meeting was scheduled for 8 in the morning, but Elena had been at the Cordova site since dawn, walking through the skeletal framework of what would become her greatest achievement. Steel beams rose against the pale sky, like the bones of some magnificent creature being born, and every angle, every measurement, every deliberate choice sang with purpose. 6 months had passed since the night Marco killed Victor Cade. 6 months of permits and inspections, of contractors and complications, of building something from nothing through sheer force of will and vision. The project had become more than business. It was vindication, proof that Elena Cross could create beauty even when the world tried to break her. Marco found her on the 3rd floor, standing where the main atrium would eventually flood with natural light. He handed her coffee without a word, just stood beside her in comfortable silence while they watched the sunrise paint the city in shades of amber and rose. "Nervous about the presentation?" he asked finally. "Excited. This is where we show the City Council and the Heritage Board what we've built, what we're going to build." Elena turned to him, unable to suppress her smile. "They're going to hate that it's better than anything they imagined." "Good. Let them hate it while we make history." Marco's hand found the small of her back, a gesture so familiar now it felt like breathing. "You ready to defend every brilliant, unconventional choice you made?" "I've been ready for months." The presentation went exactly as Elena predicted. The city council tried to find fault, to impose restrictions that would diminish her vision. The Heritage Board clutched their pearls over modern elements integrated with historical preservation, and Elena dismantled every objection with facts, precedent, and renderings so spectacular they couldn't be denied. By the time she finished, the room sat in stunned silence. Then the applause began, reluctant at first, then building to something that sounded almost like respect. Approval came through that afternoon. Full permits, blessing from every regulatory body, and grudging acknowledgement from her professional peers that Elena Cross had just changed the architectural landscape of the entire city. Marcus met her outside the council chambers, grinning like a fool. "You destroyed them. Professionally, legally, but absolutely destroyed them." "I presented facts and superior design. Not my fault they couldn't argue with excellence." Elena felt giddy with triumph, months of stress releasing in a rush of pure joy. "We did it, Marcus. The Cordova project is officially happening." "You did it. I just answered emails and kept your calendar from imploding." Marcus pulled her into a hug. "I'm proud of you, boss. You've come so far from the woman who cried in her office over a cheating boyfriend." Elena stiffened, the reminder of Leo jarring after months of barely thinking about him. "That feels like a different lifetime." "Because it was. You're different now, stronger, scarier, if I'm honest." Marcus released her with a grin. Speaking of scary, your terrifying boyfriend is waiting outside with what looks like champagne. Marco leaned against his car in the parking garage, a bottle of Dom Perignon in one hand and a smile that made Elena's heart do complicated things. When he saw her, he opened his arms, and she walked into them without hesitation. Congratulations, architect. You're about to become very famous. We're about to become very successful business partners. Elena accepted the champagne flute he poured. To the Cordova project. May it stand for centuries and make us both legends. To us, Marco corrected, touching his glass to hers. May we build something that outlasts us both. They drank, and Elena tasted victory and promise, and the future she'd fought so hard to create. The next year would be brutal. Construction was always complicated, and a project this ambitious would test every limit she had. But standing here with Marco, watching the sun set over a city that was about to see what she could do, Elena felt invincible. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the news about your project. Congratulations. You deserve this. Bianca. Elena stared at the message, emotions tangling in her chest. She hadn't spoken to her sister since that morning 6 months ago, hadn't heard from any of her family except a few bitter voicemails from her mother that she'd deleted without listening to completely. Everything okay? Marco noticed her expression change. Bianca, congratulating me on the approval. Elena showed him the message. I don't know what to do with that. You could ignore it, or you could respond with basic courtesy and continue keeping her at arm's length. Marco's voice was carefully neutral. What do you want to do? Elena considered. The old version of herself would have seen this as an olive branch, a chance to rebuild the relationship, would have rushed to forgive, to smooth things over, to go back to being the reliable sister who fixed everything. But that Elena was dead, and the woman she'd become understood that some bridges needed to stay burned. She typed back, Thank you, I hope you're doing well. Then she blocked the number. Done? Marco asked. Done. She doesn't get to be part of my victories when she contributed to my worst moments. Elena slipped her phone away. I'm choosing who gets to be in my life now, and she didn't make the cut. No regrets? Not a single one. They drove to Marco's penthouse to celebrate properly, but halfway through dinner his phone rang with the tone reserved for urgent business. Marco's expression darkened as he listened, his responses clipped and precise. I need to handle something, he said when he hung up. Leo's causing problems, claiming the Cordova project used illegal funds, threatening to go to the media. Elena's champagne suddenly tasted sour. Of course he is. He can't stand that we're successful. It's more than jealousy. He's aligned himself with some of Cade's former associates, people who want revenge for what happened. Marco's jaw tightened. I need to shut this down before it becomes a real problem. How? By reminding Leo that he doesn't want me as an enemy. That there are things about his life, his business dealings, his relationship with Bianca that he'd prefer stayed private. Marco stood, already shifting into the cold, dangerous version of himself that Elena had learned to recognize. I'll be back in a few hours. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. If this goes wrong, then I want to be there. Elena stood, crossing her arms. We're partners, Marco. That means I don't sit home safe while you handle threats alone. Marco looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression must have convinced him. Fine, but you stay in the car, and if I tell you to leave, you leave. No arguments. Agreed. They drove to a restaurant in the financial district, the kind of place where powerful people made deals that never appeared in public records. Leo was waiting in a private room, looking smug and vindicated, flanked by 2 men Elena didn't recognize but who radiated the same controlled violence as Marco's security team. Father, so good of you to come. Leo's smile was razor sharp. And you brought Elena. Perfect. She should hear this too. I'm here to give you one chance to walk away from whatever scheme you've concocted, Marco said, his voice deadly calm. One chance to remember that I'm your father and despite everything, I'd prefer not to destroy you. Destroy me, Leo laughed. You're the one who's about to be destroyed. I have evidence that the Cordova project was funded through money laundering, that you use shell corporations and offshore accounts to hide illegal transactions. When this goes public, you'll lose everything. The project, your reputation, your freedom. And you'll gain what exactly? The satisfaction of seeing me fail? Marco leaned back, utterly unconcerned. You always were short-sighted, Leo. You see tactics but never strategy. I see justice. I see you finally paying for years of criminal activity. What you see is your own desperation reflected back at you. Marco pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then turned the screen toward Leo. That's your bank account. Notice the deposits over the last 3 years that exactly match withdrawals from Cade's enterprise. You've been taking money from a criminal organization, Leo. Money you used to fund your lifestyle, your business, your relationship with Bianca. Leo's face went white. That's impossible. I never… You did. Cade cultivated you deliberately, turning you into an asset without you even realizing it. And now you're trying to expose me using information that, if investigated, will land you in prison for racketeering and conspiracy. Marco's smile was cold. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away from this crusade. You're going to leave Elena alone, leave the Cordova project alone, and disappear from my life permanently. In exchange, I won't send this evidence to the FBI. You're bluffing. Am I? Test me. See what happens. Marco stood, buttoning his jacket with deliberate precision. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, I stop being merciful. Leo's two associates shifted uncomfortably, clearly reassessing their involvement. One of them, the older of the two, spoke for the first time. Mr. Valenti, we were told this was a simple leverage situation. If what you're saying is true, it's true. And if you're smart, you'll cut ties with my son before his stupidity drags you down with him. Marco's gaze never left Leo's face. You were always weak, Leo. I tried to teach you strength, discipline, how to build something real. But you wanted shortcuts, wanted success without sacrifice. This is where that path leads, to empty threats and borrowed power that crumbles the moment someone pushes back. I hate you, Leo said, his voice shaking. I've always hated you. I know. And I've spent years disappointed in you. We're even. Marco turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Bianca knows about the money. I had evidence delivered to her this morning. She knows you've been funding your life together with blood money. How do you think she's going to react when she realizes the man she destroyed her relationship with her sister for is a criminal? Leo's expression crumpled. You didn't. I did. Because unlike you, I understand that the best way to neutralize a threat is to remove its foundation. Marco's hand found Elena's back, guiding her toward the door. Goodbye, Leo. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but you won't find it in my shadow anymore. They left Leo there, surrounded by men who were already distancing themselves, his face a mask of devastation and rage. Elena didn't speak until they were back in the car, processing everything she'd witnessed. That was brutal. That was necessary. Leo would have kept coming, kept trying to tear us down, until someone stopped him. Marco's hands were steady on the wheel, but Elena could see the tension in his shoulders. I gave him every chance to be better. He chose this. What do you think he'll do? Ideally? Disappear? Move to another city? Start over somewhere I'm not watching? Marco glanced at her. Realistically, he'll spiral, blame everyone but himself, and hopefully hit bottom hard enough to force actual change. And Bianca? We'll probably leave him once she understands the depth of his deception. Your sister is many things, but she's not stupid. She'll cut ties to protect herself. Marco's expression softened. How are you feeling about all this? Elena considered. 6 months ago, she would have been devastated to learn Leo was in serious trouble. Would have tried to help, to fix things, to protect him from consequences. Now she just felt tired and a little sad for the people they both used to be. I feel free, she said finally. Like the last thread connecting me to that old life just snapped. Leo can't hurt me anymore. Neither can Bianca or my parents or anyone who wants me to be small and accommodating. I'm done with all of it. Good. Marco's hand found hers. Because I need you focused on the future, not the past. The Cordova project is going to demand everything you have over the next year. Are you ready for that? I've been ready since the day I walked in on Leo's betrayal and chose myself over making everyone else comfortable. Elena squeezed his hand. Let's build something magnificent. The next 12 months were a blur of construction meetings, design revisions, and the thousand small crises that accompanied any major project. Elena lived and breathed the Cordova building, watching it rise from the ground like a phoenix, all glass and steel and preserved brick that honored the past while reaching toward the future. Marco was beside her every step, handling the business and political complications, while Elena focused on creating beauty. They fought sometimes, both of them too strong-willed and opinionated to avoid conflict, but they always came back to each other, to the partnership that had become the foundation of both their lives. Leo disappeared, just as Marco predicted. Elena heard through Marcus that he'd moved to the West Coast, that he and Bianca had broken up spectacularly when the truth about his finances emerged. Her sister had tried to reach out once, leaving a voicemail that Elena deleted without listening to. Whatever Bianca wanted to say, Elena didn't need to hear it. Her parents made one final attempt to guilt her into fixing the family, showing up at her office unannounced with demands that she apologize to Bianca and help Leo get back on his feet. Elena had her security escort them out and sent a formal cease and desist letter through her attorney. They hadn't contacted her since. It should have hurt more, cutting off her entire family. But every time Elena felt a twinge of doubt, she remembered the years of being taken for granted, of sacrificing her needs for their comfort, of being blamed for other people's choices. And the doubt evaporated. She'd chosen herself, and herself was thriving. The Cordova building's grand opening was scheduled for a Friday evening in October, exactly 18 months after Elena had first walked the site with Marco. The finished product was breathtaking, a perfect marriage of historical preservation and modern innovation, with ground floor galleries and restaurants, luxury residences on the upper floors, and a rooftop garden that would become the most photographed location in the city within weeks. Elena stood in the main atrium, watching light pour through the restored industrial windows she'd fought so hard to preserve, and felt emotion tighten her throat. This was it. The monument to her transformation, the proof that betrayal and heartbreak could be fuel for creating something extraordinary. Penny for your thoughts? Marco appeared at her elbow, devastatingly handsome in a tailored tuxedo. Just thinking about how far I've come. How different my life looks now compared to 18 months ago. Elena leaned into him, letting herself have this moment of vulnerability. I was so broken, Marco, so convinced that my worth was tied to making other people happy. And then you showed me I could be more. You showed yourself. I just gave you a canvas worthy of your vision. Marco turned her to face him, his expression intense. Elena Cross, you are the most extraordinary person I've ever met. You took pain and turned it into power. You built something that will stand for generations. And you did it without compromising a single principle or apologizing for being brilliant. We did it, partners. Remember? Always. Marco reached into his pocket, and Elena's heart stuttered when she saw the small velvet box. Which is why I'm hoping you'll consider making this partnership permanent. He opened the box to reveal a ring, not a traditional diamond, but a stunning sapphire surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light like captured stars. It was unusual, dramatic, absolutely perfect. I know marriage is a traditional institution, and neither of us is traditional. But I want the world to know you're mine, and I'm yours. I want to build a life together that's as extraordinary as this building. Marco's voice roughened with emotion. Marry me, Elena, not because you need me, but because we're better together than apart. Elena felt tears blur her vision, happiness so intense it was almost painful flooding her chest. A year and a half ago, she'd been someone who settled for less than she deserved, who made herself small, who believed that love meant sacrifice and compromise, and endless patience with betrayal. Now she was someone who understood that real love was partnership between equals, that the right person challenged you to be better while accepting exactly who you were, that choosing herself had led her to someone who chose her right back. Yes, she said, and watched Marco's face transform with joy. Yes, I'll marry you, on the condition that we never stop pushing each other, never settle for good enough, and never apologize for being extraordinary. Deal. Marco slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with a tenderness that belied his dangerous reputation. I love you, Elena Cross. Every fierce, brilliant, uncompromising inch of you. I love you too. Even though you're arrogant, morally flexible, and probably going to give me a heart attack with your business dealings. I'll make it worth the risk. You already have. The grand opening party was a triumph. The city's elite mingled with artists and developers, journalists photographed every angle, and Elena spent the evening accepting congratulations and praise from people who doubted her at every turn. She smiled graciously, thanked them for their support, and privately savored the irony of their sudden admiration. Near midnight, Elena found herself on the rooftop garden with a glass of champagne, looking out over the city that had witnessed her transformation. Marco joined her, pulling her back against his chest, and they stood in comfortable silence while the party continued below. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. Elena thought about the question. Regretted Leo's betrayal? No, because it had freed her. Regretted cutting off her family? No, because they'd proven they didn't deserve her loyalty. Regretted getting involved with a dangerous man and a complicated project? Not a single one, she said, turning to kiss him. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Good, because I have plans for us. More projects, bigger challenges, a legacy that will outlast us both. Marco's smile was pure confidence. Think you can handle it? I can handle anything. I survived betrayal, heartbreak, kidnapping, and 18 months of construction delays. Whatever comes next is going to be easy by comparison. That's my Elena, always ready for the next battle. Always ready to build something beautiful from the ashes. Elena raised her glass. To us, to the Cordova building, to choosing love on our own terms, and never apologizing for being exactly who we are. To us, Marco echoed, and they drank while the city sparkled below them like a million possibilities waiting to be realized. 2 months later, they married in a quiet ceremony with only Marcus and Dante as witnesses. Elena wore a dress the color of midnight. Marco wore a suit that cost more than most people's cars, and they exchanged vows they'd written themselves about partnership and respect, and building something that would last. No family attended. Elena's parents weren't invited, and Marco's only family was the son who'd tried to destroy him. But the absence of toxic people felt like freedom rather than loss. And when Elena said, "I do," she meant it with every fiber of her being. The honeymoon was brief, a long weekend in the mountains where they disconnected from business and just existed as two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their old lives. They talked about the future, about expanding their partnership to other cities, about the empire they would build together. "Do you ever miss it?" Marco asked one night as they sat by the fireplace. "The simplicity of your old life, the family dinners, the uncomplicated relationship with Leo." Elena considered. "I miss who I thought I was. The version of me who believed that being good and kind and selfless was enough. But I don't miss the reality of that life. The exhaustion of always putting everyone else first, the loneliness of never being chosen, the slow erosion of self-respect every time I accepted less than I deserved. No nostalgia for the sister relationship? Sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep, I think about what Bianca and I could have been if she'd chosen differently. If she'd respected me enough not to betray me." Elena turned to face Marco fully. "But then I remember that I'm happier now than I've ever been. That cutting out toxicity, even when it wore a familiar face, gave me room to grow into someone extraordinary. So no, I don't miss it. I'm grateful for it, because it taught me that I deserved better. And then I went out and found it." Marco pulled her close, and Elena melted into his embrace, safe and chosen and exactly where she belonged. 6 months after the wedding, Elena received a letter. It arrived at her office, addressed in handwriting she recognized immediately as Bianca's. For a long moment, Elena considered throwing it away unread. But curiosity won, and she opened the envelope to find several pages covered in her sister's looping script. The letter was an apology. Not the performative kind Bianca had offered before, but something deeper. An acknowledgement of the harm she'd caused, the years of taking Elena for granted, the fundamental selfishness that had destroyed their relationship. Bianca wrote about therapy, about taking responsibility, about understanding finally that actions had consequences and love required respect. She didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't beg Elena to give her another chance, just said she was sorry, that she understood why Elena had cut her off, and that she hoped someday Elena might find peace with what had happened between them. Elena read the letter 3 times, then filed it away in her desk drawer. Maybe someday she'd respond. Maybe someday she'd be ready to have a conversation with her sister to explore what relationship might exist between them now that they were both different people. But not today. Today she had a new project to design, a partnership meeting with Marco, and a life so full of purpose and passion that looking backward felt like a waste of energy better spent building forward. That evening, over dinner at their favorite restaurant, Elena told Marco about the letter. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Relieved, I think, knowing that Bianca is working on herself, taking responsibility. It doesn't change anything between us, but it means she might actually grow into someone worth knowing someday." Elena sipped her wine thoughtfully. "And it confirms that I made the right choice. Walking away gave her the space to face consequences without me buffering them. That's the best thing I could have done for both of us." "Will you respond?" "Eventually, when I'm ready. There's no rush." Elena reached across the table for Marco's hand. "I spent so many years running on other people's timelines, meeting their needs on their schedule. I'm done with that. If and when I reconnect with Bianca, it'll be because I want to, not because I feel obligated." Marco raised her hand to his lips. "Have I mentioned lately that you're magnificent? Not in the last hour. I was starting to worry." He laughed, and the sound filled Elena with contentment so complete it was almost frightening. This was happiness, not the absence of problems, but the presence of someone who saw all of her and loved what he found, who challenged her to be better while accepting exactly who she was, who built beside her instead of expecting her to shrink. A year later, Elena stood in front of the Architectural Society, accepting an award for the Cordova building. In her speech, she talked about transformation, about how the best design honored the past while embracing the future, about how strength came from surviving fire and choosing to build something beautiful from the ashes. She didn't mention Leo or Bianca or the family that had tried to make her apologize for other people's betrayal. They weren't part of her story anymore, just footnotes in the chapter that had led her to everything that mattered. Marco sat in the front row, pride evident in every line of his posture, and when Elena finished speaking to thunderous applause, his smile was worth more than any award. That night, in the penthouse they'd made their home, Elena stood at the windows and looked out over the city that had witnessed her complete transformation. The Cordova building dominated the skyline now, lit from within like a beacon, testament to what was possible when you refused to settle for less than extraordinary. Marco wrapped his arms around her from behind, and Elena leaned into his warmth, grateful for the journey that had led her here. Betrayal had broken her old life into pieces. But from those fragments, she'd built something far more magnificent than what she'd lost. She'd built a career that fulfilled her, a partnership that challenged her, a love that chose her every single day. She'd learned that she was enough, not because she made everyone happy, but because she refused to compromise her worth for anyone's comfort. The woman who'd walked in on her boyfriend's betrayal 18 months ago wouldn't recognize the person Elena had become. That woman had been afraid of conflict, desperate for approval, willing to set herself on fire to keep others warm. This Elena understood that the right kind of love didn't require sacrifice. That family was chosen, not obligated. That walking away from toxicity wasn't cruelty. It was survival. "What are you thinking?" Marco asked, his breath warm against her ear. "That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. That every terrible thing that happened led me here, to you, to this life we've built." Elena turned in his arms, framing his face with her hands. "That I wouldn't change a single moment, because all of it made me who I am. Who you are is extraordinary. Who we are together is unstoppable." Marco kissed her, and Elena tasted promise and partnership and a future brighter than anything she'd dared imagine when her old life had shattered. She'd survived betrayal and emerged stronger. She'd chosen herself and found love that matched her strength. She'd built monuments and legacies and a life so full of purpose that looking back felt unnecessary. The past was over. The future was theirs to create. And Elena Cross, once the woman who played it safe and made everyone else comfortable, now ruled beside a dangerous man who'd chosen her when it mattered most, not as his shadow or his possession, but as his equal in every way that counted. She didn't just survive the fire. She became it, burning away everything weak and emerging as someone who built empires instead of accepting crumbs, and she had absolutely zero regrets.